is there like a role that you've always envisioned yourself doing? So maybe we've seen the role already in a film. Maybe it hasn't been done already, or maybe this is just something you've always seen yourself doing, and just the opportunity hasn't presented itself yet. So, is there
Yeah.
something like that?
For me, as an actor, I know what's my comfort zone, what's not, and what I know I bring to set, right? And so for me, I've played around with this question, and I always lean into, you know, not so much like the paramedic or the guy next door type, but thinking for me, I'm a big superhero guy. I grew up on DC. I love Marvel. So for me, I think of a character like Martian Manhunter. A lot of people may not know him, but he's one of those characters in the comic books that I can relate to because he's an alien from Mars. His planet wiped away. He comes to Earth by himself, and eventually he finds a couple of his people, but he's always been an outsider and he always struggled to fit in. Same thing with me, growing up, in adoption, and taking it took me years. I would say decades, but I'm not that old. But it took me over 10 years to find out who I was. So for me, playing a guy like him, where yes, he's a badass superhero. He has a lot of power, and he can arguably beat Superman. But there's that part of him that's kind of like he's an outsider. He, for all his power he has, he's still struggling inside. He doesn't feel like he fits in. Nobody really wants him there outside of just helping save the world. And so, that would be something I would like to do. And I know it's not the stereotypical I want to play the dad to, an autistic kid type of role. But I think, playing a superhero like that, where, he's not mainstream in terms of a Spider-Man or Superman, but he's well known to people who know the comic books that, yes, he's a powerful, but also struggling, finding that balance of making him human and humanizing him to the point where, okay, yeah, for all the stunts and things you can do with him, also show the human elements to him as well. The sad days, the days where he's hurting because he just doesn't fit in. He misses his people. He misses the people that he yearns for. I think that would be something I would like to do for sure.
All right. So, if James Gunn is listening right now, right? Because he's part of the DC world, correct? Yeah. So, if
Yes.
James Gunn's listening right now, he has a little peek into your perspective, maybe on the character, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So then, as an actor right now, working actor, you're going through the motions. We talked a little bit about that before, with the changing times and everything, with your finger on the pulse of kind of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Um, what does the future look like? What do you think the future looks like for the American actor right now?
That's a good question. And that's one of the reasons why I asked you earlier, what do you think about this the state of the industry? I feel like, I'm gonna be honest. I've had this conversation with a numerous amount of people. I think that if you want to get at the level of most actors right now, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Michael B. Jordan, you're going to have to do things unorthodox, if you will. And what I mean by that is not, I'm not talking about skipping training, skipping classes, not getting your headshots, not doing the hard work, but you're going to have to go outside the box. And I think, one of the reasons why I say that is, most people know me either from a podcast or YouTube doing Jubilee. And what I mean by that is people got to see me as a person opposed to the showman that I tend to be. And so I think when you reach people in different avenues, I think that helps raise your stock and it helps you grow as a performer. That's why I like me doing a podcast. It's, yes, it's fun and it's entertainment, but for me, I'm also, keeping myself sharp in terms of being in front of the camera. knowing how to talk, knowing how to present myself. That's part of acting too. So I think being an actor in today's society in 2025, you can't just be an actor anymore. You can't just be a TV and film actor. You're going to have to, do a day job. You're going to have to find other ways to grow in order until you get to the point where you can make a true living at this. And we're seeing it now. We're seeing, shout out to Michael Rosenbaum. He has a podcast, Inside You, on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's a guy. I love his podcast, and you get to see that even for him, he talks about it openly. He was on Smallville. For people who don't know, Smallville, Tom Welling, who plays Superman, was on CW for over 10 years, and he's even talked about how even after such a successful show, he's had a hard time paying his bills, and that goes to show to you that unless you're a Denzel, it's going to be hard, especially in this society right now, where they're not paying Denzel money to most people anymore. And we often see Robert Downey Jr. They report, oh, he's getting paid $80 million for this one Marvel movie. Well, what you don't see is the many years where he wasn't getting
Mhm.
that. The many years he was had his own struggles, not making anywhere near that type of money. And so I think as an actor right now, yes, taking those classes, making connections, growing and learning a craft is very important. But often, no, there's voiceover work, there's commercial work, there's podcasts, there's so many things you can do as an artist to grow your brand and also tie it in together. All of the stuff that I'm doing ties into acting because it's growing me as an artist and it's making me, when I get a role, I look at it differently than if I was just going to class and doing that. And I think, we're just in a society now where, you and unless you have a name already, you have to make a name for yourself if you want to get in front of certain people. So it's hard because I think certain people, I read success stories of people who did the traditional work and they got the big break, but very often it's not the case. It's either people growing the social media, growing the brand, and they use it to cross over. And so, you know, often say you got to play the game. You can try to fight it as long as you can, but we all know this industry is going to go on without you, and there's always going to be somebody who can replace you. So, I just think that as an actor or as an American actor, find different ways to diversify yourself and make money because until you get to that point, it's going to be hard.
So then, a couple things I'll ask you. Considering post COVID, because I know things were changing, have you seen a lot of people walking away from the acting business, or have you seen more people walking towards it?
You know what's funny? Before COVID, actually during COVID, when I started the podcast, I actually interviewed someone I went to college with, and he was in business. He went to for business. All of a sudden, I see he's acting. He's in classes. He's doing short films. I'm like, what made you transition over? And I think for him, it was kind of like he used to come to the place I was doing at my college, and he was I was always fascinated by it, and I thought it was easy. And then I started learning it's actually harder than I thought. And so now I'm starting to see a trend of I think depending where you live, when I was in LA, post COVID, I would say more people wanted to be actors, but not the working actor. They wanted to be the Robert Downey Juniors of acting. And I think part of that issue, part of that is a lot of people didn't realize, oh, I moved to LA. It's expensive. There's a lot of actors here. You're not nowhere near the credits or where other people are at. And you also got to compete with these people. You're not just competing, especially in SAG, for SAG work. You're not just competing with your roommate. You're competing with John Cena, all these big names. There's a lot of people vying for these opportunities. So I think right now, I think there's more of a shift of people doing the smaller things. And I want to, I know a couple people who's left the industry to focus on other things, and I think people's priorities change as time goes on. But I see more people being comfortable with just doing the small local productions, the theater, the short student films, the short films, and I think people are getting tired of you look at how much money you got to pay for headshots. Then the acting websites, actors, actors, cast, and networks, Canada might be a little different, but the big platforms, you gotta pay for that. If you don't have an agent, you definitely gotta pay for all of this stuff just to submit yourself. Getting an agent or a manager is already difficult. Then when you get to that point, you're really gonna have to up your game up. There's no, oh, I'm gonna get my headshots 7 months from now. No, if you get a representation, if they tell you need headshots, you need to get them now. There's no, I don't have the money anymore. And so I think people are just, I think people still want to be actors. There's never going to stop. I think there's always going to be more people coming into the industry than leaving. But I also think there are people who are just comfortable with not achieving the success of a lot of the A-listers because they know it's very hard. There's a lot of work. It's not free. It's not cheap. And to balance everyday life with that, a lot of people, it just ain't worth it for them, unfortunately.
Okay. Do you have like a collective creative group that you collaborate with now? Like a group of other filmmakers, directors, actors where you come together to plan stuff for the future, or you're just collectively working together to, to help elevate each other? Or are you pretty much by yourself trying to get to the top on your own?
I would say it's a mix of. I would say I'm more of a lone wolf, and I say that I do have people. A lot of my friends, especially some of the ones that I've known since high school, who's been at the top. There's a lot of people I still work with who help me, whether it's helping run lines, I'm helping them run lines, shooting self tapes. Maybe if I need advice on getting an agent or manager, there's certain people I look to, who aren't actors. Now I do have a couple of actor friends, but for me, I've learned that it's a very selfish industry. And I'm not a selfish person. Like I will always root for anybody and help anybody that I can. But I know that I can't always rely on other people to get me where I'm going. Because for me, you know, like my last manager, we've had this talk where it's like, oh, every time I send you something, you give it to me on time. There's no excuse. There's no I'm running behind. You give me these auditions when I need them, opposed to some other people where they wait until an hour before the deadline to send it. For me, there's certain people I know I can rely on, but I've run into more people I can't rely on. They're always late, always have excuses. Granted, I know everybody's different. Everybody got lives and jobs that they got to do. But look, if you've been in this industry for over 5 years, and I'm being generous when I say that, if your manager says, "Hey, I have an audition for you. This for a Marvel project. Why are you waiting until the last hour to submit an audition tape?" Like for me, I didn't learn like that. I didn't grow into this industry learning. Hey, wait until the last minute. Usually within that first day that you get it, that's when they really making their choices. So I view this as a business. Okay, if I get an audition on Thursday and it's due on Sunday, I'm sending it in on Friday. If I have to wait that long, for me, I've met too many actors who I feel like again they care more about the limelight and the money than they do the
Yeah.
actual craft. And don't get me wrong, do I look for the day where I can actually make a real living off of this? Of course. I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't. But again, I actually enjoy this business. And so for me, I want to work with people who view it the same way, who's going to hold me accountable the same way I hold them accountable. So you know, the short answer is yes. I have a small group, but I tend to do everything on my own because I know if I'm going to get where I'm going, I got to be this. I can't blame anybody else but myself if things aren't done right. So it's a mix of both.
Okay. So the next thing I'll throw at you here is there a director or a filmmaking team? And I say a filmmaking team because obviously for like a series, a lot of times there's a core theme there, or even filmmaking, there might be a core theme, theme of people, not necessarily just a single director, but I'll put director or a filmmaking team that you see yourself working with in the future, near or far?
Yeah, for me, it's unfortunate that the show is off air right now. Although some of them are working on The Boys. Eric Kripke, I'm a Supernatural guy. I grew up watching that, especially more towards middle school and high school when it came out. I would have loved to be on that show, and I wish I I was able to get on the show, but that seems like the type of set I want to be on, where everybody's professional, but they have fun, and it's not just about the profit. I mean, granted, that's what it's always about, but it seemed like an actual family. I hear the cast members, whether they're on Supernatural or shooting The Boys right now, they talk about how much they're a family, how much they're a camaraderie, and that would have been a director and producer, Eric Kripke. I would have loved to work with, even though I think they're about to wrap that up, so the chances of that happening is pretty slim right now. But I will say, I know I've said this before. Sarah Finn, Kevin Feige, all of them, the Russo brothers. I would love to work with them, and it's not because of the stereotypical "I want to be the next Iron Man" type of thing. I've seen how they go about it. Like I said, I think we're in a different generation now. I know that Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, and all those directors, they're still very famous and very successful. But I see a shift that the superhero movies is what's in right now, and it seems like they have a tight ship. Like they know how to cast the characters, they know what they're doing, and there's a certain feeling that I'm getting from when I'm reading press releases and watching videos and interviews that everybody enjoys working with them, working for them. And so for me, granted, I want to be a superhero like everybody else, but I also love the professionalism. Like I watched Sarah Finn on the Russo brothers podcast on YouTube, if I'm getting that right, and she was talking about how she goes about casting and how much she cares about the actors. You don't often hear that. Oftentimes, as actors, we don't get to hear very highly successful casting directors, let alone just the everyday casting director who shoots Law or who casts for Law and Order in New York City, right? You don't hear for me at least, let me say this. I got to hear how she cares about the actors. She cares about, yes, working for the production is very important to her. That's how she makes a livelihood. But she will stand up if she believes in a certain actor. And she went in the story about Tom Holland, how he wasn't the first choice of Spider-Man. Somebody else was, but she fought for him. And he's been an amazing Spider-Man. So for me, I would love to work with them because it seems like they're very passionate,
Mm.
and especially Sarah, she seems very in touch with how actors feel. She seems in touch on what people want, and I want to work with somebody that seems like they will have my best interests as well as their best interests at heart too. And I'll throw you in there too. I'd like to work with you, but you know,
Well, that will happen. That's coming, right?
I
So,
appreciate
yeah,
it.
that's definitely coming. uh, you know. But you said a few key things there that's right on point. And actually, Supernatural, I think, what did it run for? 14 seasons. I know they shot it in
16.
Vancouver.
Oh, 15, 15, 15.
15 seasons. Wow. I
Yeah.
remember they shot it in Vancouver, I remember, and I think they were supposed to end season 7 or something. Every time I
Yeah.
kept looking, it kept going and it kept going. And I said, "Wow, this has to be 15 seasons." I mean, back in the day, obviously that was quite common. You have these shows that can run for 10 years, but in the modern time that it ran, that was quite a run. 15
Yeah.
seasons was one heck of a run. And you're talking, I think probably they were doing 22 episodes a season for
Yeah, 22,
14
23. Yeah.
14 that so there's a point, yeah, that becomes a family, and that chemistry is something you can't buy, you can't pay for it, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a show like that, Supernatural, of course, there had to be that something else there. Obviously, where they shot, what I think is number one,
Yeah.
Vancouver. It's, I mean, there's a saying there: if you do anything sci-fi, it works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was one film that didn't work. And I hate to say it because I'm a fan of Halle Berry, but Catwoman didn't work. But
No.
yeah, there is something to those types of families. So a lot of people sometimes say, why is it that a lot of the successful filmmakers, they keep working with the same people over and over and over again? And it's like, it's not just about it working, but there's just this, people are familiar with each other. They know how each other. It's like a well-oiled machine. And I say, well, why would you change it, right?
Right.
When it's so fine-tuned like that, and you're making really good stuff and it works, right? So I get it, right? I do, I get it. And you never know, it's Supernatural, 15 seasons. I'm sure there's going to be some type of reunion movie or something. Who knows, right?
Yeah. I I
I
could
didn't see the
definitely
last season, but I don't know.
I could definitely see it come. I feel like I think the actors themselves, like I love Jared and Jensen, and they talked about it. I think for them, they love the show and they will continue to do it. But I think as an actor, sometimes you just want to spread your wings a little bit, and they
Yeah,
probably just want a little time to get away and just find other work to diversify themselves because
yeah,
you don't want to. People often talk about Mariska Hargitay in Law and Order. She's been doing that for what 25 years plus, and she makes good money and she has a steady job. But people often say, "Oh, she hasn't really done anything outside of Law and Order." But why would she? She's making way more money than most actors will ever see in their career. So in one episode. So I think it depends on the type of actor you want to be. But for them, they knew that Supernatural was a niche type of show, and they know their fan base and the people who love that show, they're going to continue on more. So 5-10 years down the line, while they may not be spring chickens anymore, but they'll still have enough pep in their step that they can do a reunion season, do another season where maybe they pass the torch to somebody else, even though I don't know how much that will work. But
yeah.
actually, before we could tell you, I just want to say, because if I let this end without saying this, one person I will actually throw in there that I would love to work with is Ryan Coogler.
Hmm.
I, I don't know how his name escaped my mind, but him, Chadwick Boseman, and Michael B. Jordan, they had such a good chemistry and such a good bond that you don't, especially for black creators, you don't really see that in Hollywood. You don't really see a lot of black people behind the camera and the actors actually form like a big a team, a unit.
Team, yeah.
And so, I watched a lot of his work, him and Michael B. Jordan, and rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman, Fruitville Station, Black Panther, Sinners. They do very great movies. And Ryan Coogler just seems like the type where, he seems like, yes, he's about the business, but if you're willing to work, he will show you the way as well. And like I've heard him talk about working with Michael B. Jordan when he was just a kid, and to see that type of friendship in this industry last as long as it has shows me that yes, he cares more about the art than he does about the money. And so that's another guy I would love to work with, not just because he's black, that's a big part of it, but also his work ethic. He just seems like a very down to earth director. He's about his business. He's professional, and he just has a good vibe about him too. So
Yeah, you're right, and I think Forrest Whitaker is probably a part of that. I believe he obviously. I think going full circle with him, he helped him with Fruitville Station. I
yeah,
believe if that's how the story goes, and lo and behold, Ryan Coogler. I don't know how many movies in he was. I think what he was Fruitville Station, Creed, and then Black Panther. Like
yes,
three
yeah,
movies into his career. The third one is Black Panther, obviously, and then of course he brings Forrest Whitaker in, and which might have been one of the biggest films he's been in. I think if you want to look production budget wise, stuff like that, right? So it's interesting to see how that when you're moving together like that, you never know. You just don't know sometimes, right? But when you're working together, every time one person makes it, there's 10 other people that are going to make it too, right? Automatic, just period. Like it's happening. So yeah, those guys have achieved a lot, and I see what they did in Creed as well. And of course, it was very well done, Creed. And now they're busy for the next 10 years, spinning out that and building out that whole universe.
Yeah,
And it's something original. It
that's
wasn't a
true.
it wasn't a reboot. It wasn't something from the 70s or the 80s. It was an original screenplay, and now all of a sudden they're going to, studios, of course, maximize it on at every particular turn, right? So yeah, it's amazing to see that, and you don't know sometimes, right? And I think that's one of the benefits of working with a team, or working with a group. You have those opportunities to, and again, Sinners came out in theaters this year. Okay, I don't know when they went into production. It could have been last year or the year before, right?
Yeah,
The thought, the inception point of the ideas, how long have they been talking about it, right? As a team, brainstorming back and forth. We're going to film this, the story. You know what I mean? Like, I look at our next film, Genesis, right? We've been just me, my wife, and the rest of our team. These are characters we've been talking about for 6 years, and back and forth. And it's like by the time it becomes a thing, everybody's so invested into it, in thought and emotion and energy, right? Something special gets birthed, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's cool when you can have that team that we were kind of talking about, and you can come up together. I just wish sometimes, because you almost echoed a lot of what I hear. Sometimes actors, I feel as though unless you look extremely different or you have a different agenda, they get maybe a little bit threatened. Oh shoot, well, we might be auditioning for the same role, right? So, oh my God, you could, I don't want to give you something and then you take that role from me, which I always said is the wrong kind of thinking. Because again, go back to the one thing: every time one person makes it, there's 10 other people. And if for example you and I are actors and then you made it, I would be cheering like there's no tomorrow, because I know somebody's next, and then somebody's going to be next after that, and then and eventually it'll be me too, right? It's
right.
just a timing thing. So no different than somebody, coming down the row handing out $100 bills. Of course, everybody's cheering because they know they're getting $100 bill next too, right? So of course, everybody's happy, right?
Yeah,
And but if you get mad and you get upset and you're trying to block, I find you just create another kind of energy, and it just it's not beneficial, right? So anytime we can support each other, I think we should. You just don't know, because I honestly believe, somebody else, for example, in one of our productions could go on and be a huge movie star one day. Who knows? You don't know how
right.
things are connected. We'll cheer and laugh, and I'll be proud that we were able to put a production together where somebody was able to achieve that. It's just there's so many things, and things come around, right? but
Yeah,
um but it's nice when you can do that, and when you do it early enough, you find that team and you just kind of go with it, right? One thing I was going to ask you, I noticed that you're in a film called Third Week.
yes,
So I was wondering if you just talk to us a little bit about that. So your role, how did that happen? Were you auditioning for it? Were you offered the role? And then what happened when you got on set? When did you shoot it? And I see it was released. So maybe you did talk about it on some other podcasts that I try to keep up when
yeah,
episodes are coming out. So excuse me in advance if you did. uh, but considering it's a recent project, just the journey, maybe if you would, on how that all kind of how you got there, how it came about, uh,
yeah.
you know.
Absolutely. I that's one of my favorite projects I've done. And I've up until that point, I've had a before I moved to LA, I had a lot of good luck in the city. I was doing feature films based off real people, real events, and just playing around and doing different things. And then when I moved to LA, I got this role towards the end of the pandemic. And so it came about. I was stuck in a rut. I had the podcast going, but I just felt like nothing was clicking, and especially in LA, it wasn't. Like I just couldn't get where I wanted to go, and I had an agent and everything out there who I'm still good friends with to this day. But I just felt like because of my status, I wasn't getting the opportunities that I really wanted. So I remember I said, I have to do something different. And so around this time, I was going back and forth between New York and LA, visiting my family in New York and going back to LA. And I saw this on Backstage. I saw this casting, and he was the director, Jordy Tarrant. He was casting for the doing all casting for the roles. Alvin was the role I auditioned for, and I remember he gave me a call and he told me about his work, who he worked with, because Backstage can be a little iffy. When I was on it before 2020, it was legit. It seemed like everything was cool.
Hmm.
During the pandemic, it seemed like it was getting flooded with spam and people looking in the traffic. People, no, I'm not even
Yeah.
joking. It just seemed like a scam. So he ended up giving me a call and was like, "Hey, I saw your profile. I saw you have a agent and stuff like that. I would like to bring you in. Over Zoom because I was living in LA at the time. He was in New York. And so we did a Zoom conference. He sent me the sides and he was like, he gave me directions like, okay, this is the story, this the vision of the character that we're looking for, this the vision of the actual movie and the direction we're going for. And so I auditioned for the role of Alvin, who his name's gonna come back to me. I love the guy, Aaron Poon, who ended up winning the role. Auditioned for Alvin. Everything went well. We did the audition for like 30, 45 minutes. And I didn't hear from him for a week. I get an email from him. It's like, hey, you have time for a Zoom call. I want to talk to you about the status. No, I didn't get it, when you hear that. So I get on Zoom and he's like, hey, you know, I casted the role of Alvin, but I loved your energy so much that I actually wrote a character for you, Taylor. And I was this is the first time I ever heard this in my life. I knew that it happened, but I only thought it happened at the highest level for certain people. So he's like, "Yeah, I wrote this character for you, Taylor. He's the best friend of Alvin, and he's the guy who brings comedic relief, brings that lightness to the film because the film is set in the 1990s Staten Island, and he grew up in the projects, Alvin, and he gets in trouble, goes to prison, comes out, and the movie is basically about him redeeming, from that mistake he did. So he was like, you have that energy. I saw your hair, I saw your personality, and I said, this is the role for you. And so I remember accepting the role. He sent me the script. He was like, read it over. And we did a read through. It all worked out. I came into the city March 2023. I met all the cast and the crew, the makeup artists, everybody who's involved. It was a pretty sizable production. I like this, and so we did a whole stage read through. Everybody read the characters, read the roles. He let me know what shoot dates he was thinking about. We were shooting this Staten Island and Manhattan. His family owns a machine shop on 23rd Street in Lower Manhattan. So he was shooting a lot of this there for the work stuff. He was shooting a lot of the family in-house stuff in the Heights, Washington Heights for people who know New York City. And then I shot a lot of my stuff in Staten Island. Funny enough, they was actually shooting Wu Tang, the TV show. I think Wu Tang Saga. They were shooting it
Yeah.
not that far from where we were shooting at. So we shot outside of one of the iconic apartment housing complexes in Staten Island, and so we were shooting this outside, and I shot for 4 days. And I'll never forget the first day. We get out there, and a bunch of gang members show up, and they just standing around watching. Because one of the scenes I did, we was in the car, um, and we had the camera set up, the lights, yeah, everybody with the booms and everything, and they just watching. And so I remember getting out the car because we was taking a break, and they was like, "Yo, what? Y'all shooting the project out here?" It's like, yeah. He was like, man, can I get a role in this? This looked fun. And so, everybody was tense. I grew up in the project, so I wasn't tense, but a lot of the people there, they didn't grow up in that environment. So they thought they was coming to start trouble. So, that was just a little funny bit from it. But, I shot my scenes over a period of a week. They continued on. I wrapped up early because a lot of the stuff they wanted to do were outside. So they did that first before the weather changed. And so, I did mine. I stayed around, hanged out with him. We talked about, everything. He invited me to wrap a party. And then I went back to LA. And so, after, he kept in contact. He created an Instagram for the movie, and he told me about what the because at this point I know about the business. So I was trying to figure out, okay, is this going on streaming? Because everybody's going to ask me, streaming, is this going to a film festival? He told me his vision that he wanted to go to the bigger festivals. I'm forgetting the top of my off the top of my head, but he really wanted, because it's co-produced with Spain, a production company in Spain as well. They had the exclusive rights for the meantime. So it went over to Spain. It got its release over there, and it won a couple awards. And then it ended up being premiered last year at the Americana Film Festival in Queens. And then it also got another showing with I think it's the New York Film Festival. I'm forgetting the actual name of it. I couldn't make it to that one, but they end up premiering that one as well. So far, he reached out to me. He was like, "Yo, everybody loved your scenes. Everybody thought you was hilarious. You lit up the room." And as of right now, I haven't talked to him in quite a while because I know he's shooting another project at the moment. But I think the intention is for it to hit streaming platforms later this year, early next year. Once the Spain run is done, and then hopefully we could get a U.S. actual premiere on a streaming platform. So that's something out of my control, but that's the goal for sure.
Okay. All right. Nice. So that's in the works. I mean, we can have lots of conversations. We can almost bring this full circle now to how we started the discussion with actors and the business of acting. So you've got this film now that you're a part of, and that's part of the intangible thing I talk about. I understand the director when somebody comes in the room and they've got this presence and this way that it's like, oh my god, I don't have a role to offer them. And it's like, but we can write in a role right now, right? Just and you're writing specifically for that person. And that's a huge accomplishment because it means you went into the room and you left such an impression that they're like, we don't have a role for you, but there's no way we can do this film without you being in it, right?
Right.
To the point where he's sitting there and he's literally writing the role, knowing he's going to offer it to you because he wrote it for you, right? But it speaks to the magnitude of the impact that you had when you went into that room, which is huge, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes it's not quite what you thought, and then even for me, there's people that we saw or had on set. They weren't for that film, but I'm still thinking about them for the next project. They don't know that. I'm still keeping up with what they're doing. They don't know that.
Right.
But the moment's coming where a call is going to be coming, or a call is going to get made, and that didn't happen just overnight, right? That was from years ago. Yeah, you know what I mean. The seed was planted a long, long, long time ago. So always a testament when you can have that impact, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know our time's coming short, but just to go full circle, as an actor, business of acting, you've got this project. came out internationally. It's rolling out into the states. We'll talk after about a few things, but now, how to use an actor? Sometimes people say, "What's next?" Capitalize on that, especially as an American actor, because I find other actors internationally operate from a different type of a mindset. I find sometimes American actors could be more proactive, with how things are being rolled out, and how to maybe elevate not just the project but themselves and their counterparts and the people around them. So how do you capitalize on that now at just Percy Inc., right?
Yeah,
As a CEO of your company, with that brand, how do you capitalize on what happens next? Because you never know sometimes, right?
that's true. That is very true. And I'll tell you, and this relates to your question. The first movie premiere I went to, it was a superhero movie. I have it on my phone. I'm forgetting the name of it. But it was with Owen Wilson. My buddy invited me this red carpet in Manhattan at one of the most prestigious theaters. And this is the first time I'm getting my picture taken on an actual red carpet. And I got to meet the director of the movie, his producer, and the cast. And I got to talk to him a little bit. And I got to see, okay, the movie's done, but this is where the show actually begins, because now you have to promote yourself, and you see people showing up, showing out. They're talking to the audience, they're promoting themselves, they're promoting the movie. And then I follow a few of them, and they follow me, and I'm watching them. Months, even a year down the line, they're still talking about this movie, and they're talking about the newest project. So for me, you know, I'm in a unique position in the sense that I have my Instagram that is doing all right. I'm not Dwayne Johnson levels yet, but I'm doing all right to the average actor. And so I have that, and I have this podcast. And so for me, and that's one of the things with the director, how we bonded. Also, was I felt like I have the platform where, and this is no diss to any actor at all. Not everybody needs a podcast, but when you have a platform, it makes it easier to help promote and sell the project. And so I told him, I said, look, when this really gets going, I'll have you on a podcast. We talking about this movie, how you got me involved, how you went about casting and all this stuff, talking, promoting the movie. I will shout it out. I will promote, the movie myself and promote my scenes as well. And I took the initiative. And I remember he reached out to me. He was like, you're the only person so far who's showed at least parts of the movie. And I said, because I know as an actor, when people often ask me, "Did you get the role? When is this coming out?" They want to see results, and so for me, even if it's just a 20-second clip to get people anticipated, that sparks interest. And so for me, I looked at it as, okay, the show is done, the acting is done, but this is where we really get it going. And so, I took the initiative to show clips, to show, my performance in the movie, promote the movie every way I can. Talking about on the podcast, address it in magazine interviews or whatever. I took the initiative to promote the hell out of this as much as I can, not just for me, but for the other cast members as well. And also for him, because I know this was such a hard thing to pull off with, so many, so as you know, there's so many things going on, and that's the least I can do to show my appreciation. And so, like you said, it's very few actors will get the opportunity to have a role written for them after failing an audition. So I just took the initiative, like, this the least I can do is show my appreciation to him and also for this film by promoting it. And how do you not promote your own project? That's like me opening up a restaurant and don't put up no flyers. Like, how do you promote yourself if you don't promote? So I take great pride in my work. I've learned early on, I've had my fair share of the acting is trash or whatever. But now I'm at the point where people want to see acting. People know me for being an actor, even though I don't do it every day as much as I want to. But people want to see the next clip. So I know that, I take pride in my work, and I want other people to see the work, not just for me, but for everybody else as well, And so uh, I'm a businessman. I view myself not just as an actor, but as an entertainer. And so, you know, any entertainer will, show the spotlight on their work. So, you know, even if I just talk about it on the podcast, I think as long as people watch it, I'm doing my job.
Okay. Yeah, got it. So, which is a very progressive outlook because I think part of the issue, again, going full circle that we talked about, that point of view that you have might be missing from a lot of talent right now because they're focused on, I got to do the work on set, but not
Yeah,
necessarily, okay, now what? The movies come out, now what, right? So I'm glad you spoke to that because I just wanted to kind of bring things full circle and kind of wrap it up to that point because you are taking those proactive steps because sometimes when lightning strikes, you're ready.
right.
You know, it's like the worst thing that could happen. Somebody sees something of you and they can't figure out how to find out who you are or where you are or how to get in touch, right?
Yeah,
Eventually they just kind of give up. Can't get in touch. There's no agent. There's no emails. There's nothing. Move on next, right? Worst thing that could happen, but and you'll never know, right?
yeah,
Best thing that could happen is kind of what you're doing. You're expanding the reach of the film, helping to elevate everybody else around the film, the director, the project overall, and even yourself simultaneously. And that turns into something we have no idea what that's going to be, right? No clue. But you and I know we're about to wrap up. We'll have a quick conversation about this one too off the air here. So no, it's true. Listen, we're going from a few independent films. Obviously, we had our last film, EFC, dropped independent film. We have another one coming out, independent film. But we're going from these smaller independent films where now we're like scaling at such a large degree, going to films that are millions of dollars now,
yeah,
right? And part of that is trying to take these things to the max. I don't think there's a max with these things. Again, there's no limit, but it's just you got to get in front of it. If you're not doing it, no one's going to do it for you, right?
yeah,
Essentially at the end of the day, if you're not bringing it to the audiences, no one's going to do it for you. If you're not talking to them, no one's doing it for you anymore, right?
yeah,
The market is so competitive now that they don't have to. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So the onus is definitely on you to do it, and I think it's definitely weeding out a lot of players
yeah,
as well because yeah, you might be doing it for the wrong reasons, and there's a crowd getting weeded out there, and then there's another crowd that's just pretty much gave up, right? And then obviously there's a group that's persistent. They love what they're doing. They're going to see it through. They're going to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going until that turning point happens, and then boom, right?
yeah,
So there is a lot of that as well, and but ultimately, you summed it up. That's the era we're in right now.
yes. And I'm putting my host hat back on because Jace has been wonderful. There was a lot of things we was going to talk about, but again, this is a show where we do what we want and we give the people what they want, which is entertainment. So this is not the last you will hear of Jace. He is one of the most hardworking people in show business, even though he's from Canada. I'll give him a pass. I'm just kidding. Jace, I I don't feel like I have to ask you what's coming up, but for the people who may be tuning in to hear you for the first time, where can people find you? Where can people find your work? Like I mentioned, EFC, you actually can stream it on Tubi, and you can mention the rest because I'm blanking. But
Well, in
but
in the US, you could stream it across all digital platforms, whatever it is you're using, whether it's Tubi, whether it's I don't even know all the stuff out there now, but pretty much all digital platforms. Obviously, Prime, Apple, Tubi. I think YouTube as well. It's on there. It's if you're in the States, just type in EFC movie or just go follow the page at EFC movie. You'll find it. There's no reason to find it. Internationally, Spain, we were just released in Spain, in Spanish, which was
Oh,
interesting to see that in Spanish. Obviously, we're in Mexico as well, on Tubi. We're in the UK on Prime, Spain in Prime. Australia's coming soon, I believe, on Prime. So you just follow the film at EFC Movie. I'm easy to find at Jaze Bordeaux, or you just go to jazbordeaux.com. Keep an eye out on the next film dropping next year, Let Go. This will be one for the ages.
yeah.
This is it's one of those, right? And this one's gonna be a good one. And you can follow that at Let Go Movie on Instagram and or X or YouTube. So just keep an eye out for that. And but yeah, we'll look forward to coming back again and doing this part 3 sometime in the near future, right?
Well, technically part four because this is gonna be split
Part
up.
4, yeah,
Part
okay.
four. But Jace, like I said, I see you. You're doing your rounds. I think you're finally getting your just due, getting your flowers. I'm seeing you out there. Maybe I started the trend. I deserve a little $5,000, but I see the hard work you're doing. I got the chance to watch EFC, and it's a very good movie. I highly, especially if you like combat sports, if you're a UFC fan, you definitely like this movie. I think there's a lot of elements that you'll enjoy, and it's just a nice blend of all things entertainment. And I think if you haven't watched it, then you're gonna catch a spinning elbow from me or Jace. But it,
Macho Man style, yeah.
which no, I'm kidding. But no, all seriousness though, Jace, thank you for coming on. We had a great chat. I know some people are probably done drinking their beer by now, but you know what? At least we gave them a show and we entertained. And it's always a pleasure to talk to someone as professional and as esteemed as you. And hopefully I may not win Best Director, but hopefully I get to win Best Actor at the Oscars or on the highest level like you. But like I said, this is not the last we'll hear from you or see you. There's a lot more coming. And like I often say, a helping hand is a better hand. And action. Oh wait, it's actually cut and cut and cut.
Yeah.